Cool.
Right, well, I'm up. Nothing is coming through on Twitch, though. Oh, no, there we go.
Yeah, it's just a bit behind. A bit of a delay.
A big delay for once. Cool, cool, cool. Coolios.
Good to go.
Yeah.
Sweet.
Oh, just let us know when everyone's going.
All good.
All right, then. Well, where do you want to start, boys?
The top.
At the top. All right. Well, I guess the big thing, the big news, would be Warner Brothers' announcement of the what's it called? Quidditch Live or Quidditch Super? I can't even remember what it's called now. Do you remember?
Should have looked this up before
I,
we began.
I, I had it on the top of my head. ADHD does not help.
It's all good. We'll start again. No one's watching.
They are on mine.
Yeah, right.
Um, well, obviously, this is the reason they left it out of Hogwarts Legacy, quite clearly.
Okay, well, I have maybe a point there, is that it is being made by a different development studio. So there is a question, I suppose, uh, as to whether Warner Brothers directed them not to put in Quidditch
Yeah.
because they were going to release a separate Quidditch game, or whether the developers of Hogwarts Legacy, whose name has slipped my mind, if they said, look, there's no way that we can get Quidditch into this game. It's already too big, and we don't have the time to develop a working Quidditch system in the game. And then Warner Brothers have offered a development
Solution.
contract to a smaller developer.
Yeah. Yeah,
Because
I can see
there's quite
both.
clearly a graphical difference between this Quidditch game, or what's been shown of it so far,
Yeah.
and Hogwarts Legacy.
Yeah, well, to me, from what I've seen of it, it looks like they're trying to go down almost the Rocket League sort of model for it. Um, Especially when they've sort of, from what I read again, was they're looking at, that sort of season pass type style thing for it. It's going to be online. So there's going to be a lot of matchmaking again, like Rocket League, like those sort of games. So that leads me to believe that and it is going to be Portkeys as well. Portkey Games.
Yeah, I don't actually think they were the primary developer though
No, no,
of Hogwarts Legacy.
no,
I
they're not.
think that is a kind of I don't know, kind of just a company that's been set up to be the face of
Yeah,
this new Harry Potter or Hogwarts kind of content, and I don't
yeah.
actually think that was the development company.
No, I think because they worked with Niantic, didn't they, with um the mobile game.
Mm-hmm.
So
Yeah, yeah, I think so.
I'm wondering if there was some kind of integration technology that they came up with, and that's the reason why they're being named on them all.
Yeah. So the developer of Hogwarts Legacy was Avalanche Software.
Yeah, that's right.
So Portkey Games is just a label that Warner Brother Games has come up with. So it's essentially just a sub label under the Warner Brothers Games
Yeah,
publisher.
yeah, yeah. Makes a lot of sense. A lot of sense. Any thoughts to it, Princess?
before Hogwarts came out.
Yeah, I think it was. I think that there had to have been
Yeah,
some
there had
kind
to
of.
be because if you're not gonna put it in one of your biggest games in how long, and that's what everyone wanted to do, there had to have been talks.
Yeah, especially with what's been shown already. Like that game's been in development for a while,
Mm.
Yeah.
so that would say to me that yeah, definitely it's been left out because of. And it might be a combination. It might have just been too hard and too big to put in as well. So, and they might have realised that early, and that's why Warner Brothers has stepped away to create a Quidditch game, which obviously the fans have been asking for quite some time.
I did think about that, but then they've got decent flying mechanics in the game anyway, which is the majority of what you would need to build Quidditch into the game.
Yeah,
Ultimately, it's about the flying mechanics, and they've introduced that into the game, and it works fine. I'm
but
not
you'd
a particular
also
fan of it, but like it's clearly a working system. So if they can get flying mechanics working for not just brooms but a bunch of different mounts, why would they not be able to then add add in Quidditch?
would would it be the um the fact that it'd almost have to be an instance that you'd have to go into because like as soon as you started up a game of Quidditch, essentially, like all of a sudden you're going to have NPCs going into the crowd. Like the whole game itself's going to have to then be ported over into a subvert, like into a separate part of the
But
game.
it does that anyway when you go into certain caves and things. It starts a separate instance.
Yeah, but that would be contained within its. It's only a small part of the game that's contained. Whereas
Hmm.
with Quidditch, it has the potential that it could go like it's not held within the Quidditch pitch. Like
Sure,
the
sure.
snitch could go anywhere on that map.
Yeah, they could put artificial limits in there though, couldn't they? Because they do that with not allowing you to fly over certain mountain
Yeah,
ranges. So they could
yes,
just put those same artificial limits in to say, okay, we're going to go a bit broader than just the limits of the Quidditch pitch, but we're going to put in some kind
yeah,
of barriers.
but you're still then gonna have. Oh,
Oh, one second.
Yeah.
Princess just disappeared. Um, we'll carry on for the moment. So you're still going to have the problem though that you're still going to have to take the whole map, or at least the visible part
Mm.
of the map. So it's still going to be a very large instance that they're going to have to create.
Potentially. Maybe. It should, in theory, be able to run on the PS5 hardware. I'm sure.
Oh
Maybe
yeah,
maybe the problem was that that because they decided that they were going to make a PS4 port of this, they weren't able to get it running on PS4 hardware. Like that, there is a possibility. I think our first theory is probably the more likely
yeah.
to be correct. But yeah, I mean, we don't know for sure, and
No,
until they say anything officially, we won't know. But
and they probably won't
it
either because they're not going to give away too
no,
much from the
regardless,
start.
it is disappointing to a certain extent. But I don't feel like Hogwarts Legacy was a worse game for not having Quidditch. Personally, I
I,
don't think the lack of Quidditch detracted from the experience of the game at all.
I think if Quidditch had been in it, it would have detracted from the game.
I think there's a good possibility of that as
Because a
well.
lot of people, myself included, would have gone and spent so much time playing Quidditch, the rest of the game would have got forgotten.
Yeah, and the only other option for them would have been that you could only play a few Quidditch games a year, like you could only do a season and you got a limited amount of
Yeah,
games. And then, like if they had done a really good job with the Quidditch, you would have just felt like that's not enough.
yeah. And then if they wanted to go down this track of doing this other game as well, this Quidditch Champions, then you would have had the whole issue of, okay, well, it feels different, it flies different, everything just seems so different, and it may have
Yeah.
been for the better or for worse, but because it would have been different, it then hurts the sales of one or the other, or
There is another possibility, which I think is probably less likely, but it could be that Warner Brothers have gone to this other developer for the Quidditch game completely separately to Avalanche Software, either beforehand or maybe after they've already agreed to do Hogwarts Legacy,
yeah,
and have asked them to make a Quidditch game because they're trying to capitalize on as much Harry Potter stuff that they can.
yeah,
And then they've realized that there's a potential conflict, some way down the track.
yeah.
And Warner Brothers have then had to tell Avalanche Software, no,
Take it
you
out.
can't put in
Yeah.
Quidditch because we've got other IP that's going to take care of that.
In any instance with these two games, you would have thought from Warner Brothers' point of view that they would be trying to get them out as close to each other as possible, though, wouldn't you?
Which I think they've done.
But I think the Quidditch Champions is still a bit of a way off, though, isn't it?
Yeah, but you got to think it's not out on Xbox and all that yet, so people haven't played the game.
Yeah.
Oh yeah. So like, yeah, because they're only just opened up for play testing for Quidditch Champions.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So, and Hogwarts was only out on new gen and PC 2 months earlier than old gen.
Yeah.
Yeah,
So there's a lot of people that haven't played it.
Yeah. It's still not out on PS4 and
Yeah.
that's
Xbox Series X.
in a couple of weeks, isn't it?
Yeah.
And then it's still another month after that before it even comes to the Switch.
Yeah.
So you've got
It's
a
crazy.
month there where you got people playing it non-stop, and then you've also got us that are getting all the achievements and all that still playing.
Yeah, I'm still gonna go back.
Like, there you go, it came out in Feb, and you've still got to go back.
Yeah, I'm still gonna go back and finish.
On that point, actually, I was talking to a work colleague today, and she played it over the holidays and 100%ed it. So I need to get some tips from her, I think.
Yeah, but pass those tips on so that we can find out where those.
She gave me the guide the online guide that she followed, so I'll pass that on to you.
Yeah, good. Well, I need to get off Diablo 3 to get back onto that, which then takes me into the second point I wanted to talk about. Now, we don't have to talk about this point about this game specifically, but we can talk about the overall part. But I read over the last week about Diablo 4 having permadeath for hardcore players in their PvP or PvEVP area. So if you get killed by another player in that area on hardcore mode, it's permadeath for that character. What are your guys' thoughts on permadeath?
Look, in some games I like it, but it's a tricky one.
I think it can be for really hardcore players a great experience for certain single player titles. I think the idea of it in a multiplayer game is ridiculous, personally, because there's just so much, so many possibilities that you can get screwed over
Mm.
by the mechanic. By, I don't know, you just get a tiny bit of lag, you get killed, and that's it. You've lost that character forever. You know.
Yeah,
Yeah,
true.
Um,
you've got desync, you've got everything now too these days. So
Yeah, I mean, it's definitely not something that I would be looking at trying um, within the first year, if not more, on
maybe
Diablo.
we're just not the target audience. I don't know. Like, maybe there are people who really are calling for this and think that it's great, but
I mean,
um,
don't get me wrong. Like, I love Diablo. Um, I get up to like Torment 13 on Diablo 3. Um, when I'm playing like seasons and stuff like that, which I'm doing at the moment. But I mean, I'd want to be at that level before I even looked at going into something like that. I mean,
right, right.
I Diablo hasn't even had PvP yet. Like, this is the first time they're going to have PvP, and knowing what Blizz servers are like at launch and stuff like that, I would not be touching it for at least the first year, because you just know that there's going to be, like you said, there's going to be lag, there's going to be server issues, there's going to be login issues, there's going to be kicks. Like, it's always a mess, and they are doing um, server stress testing in the lead up to launch. But I mean,
yeah, there's only so much of that you can do though, and
yeah, exactly. Like, you know, it's still going to be an
Also, are
absolute
they?
nightmare.
I don't know because I've never played Diablo, but are they potentially going down a microtransactions route as well?
I don't know.
Because you can imagine a situation where even if you've got a really good internet connection and you don't get screwed over by that, but you just end up in the same instance as a whale and they have paid thousands of dollars to have a character that can just destroy you in an instant.
Yep. Um,
and your, I don't know, 100 hours of hard work is just gone.
well, their Diablo Immortal does have, which is the mobile version, does have um, a paid element to it, where you can essentially pay to win,
Mm-hmm.
but you don't need to.
Right.
Like, you can smash through that game and do dailies and like earn everything that people are paying for reasonably quickly compared to most other games of that style.
Yeah, sure.
Um, so I think it's a possibility they could. I haven't looked into too much. I've sort of tried to steer myself clear of too much information, because I want to be
Mm-hmm.
surprised when I get in there.
Yeah.
I have watched, like, the trailers and stuff like that, but that's about it. But yeah, it sort of surprised me a little bit when I was scrolling through IGN and saw, yeah, they're adding this permadeath to their PVE VP area. So there's obviously going to be NPCs and stuff like that in there that you can um, kill and get these shards of hatred, as they called them. But you can also get those from players from killing them, and that's where the permadeath comes in.
Do you think it will be a situation where people will just set up lots of temporary characters that they just used
Yeah,
for that area,
yeah.
and people don't,
But I don't
just
know if
don't
I don't know if
risk?
you'll be able to transfer those shards onto other characters.
Yeah, I suppose if you could, then maybe it's not as bad of a
Mm.
mechanic
But
as it sounds. But if you can't, then
it could
what's the
al- could also
benefit?
it could also be a situation like their auction house. They had an auction house on. Diablo 3 when it first came out, and geez, this is going back 12 odd years, but you used to be able to like get items and you'd be able to put them on the auction house and then be able to use gold, and I'm pretty sure from memory you're able to use real life money as well to buy things off this auction house.
Right.
And then, Blizz obviously took that money and converted it into coins and then gave those coins to the seller. And that got massive negative feedback.
Hmm.
And they ended up stripping that out of the game reasonably quickly within like the first year from memory. I
Yeah.
think
Okay.
I only ever used it once to buy a bow or a crossbow for my first character. So
I think it'd be alright if it wasn't pay to win.
yeah, if the microtransactions there, I think we're going to be fucked.
Yeah, if there is microtransactions, everyone's fucked because us three, for an example, are just gonna wanna go in, play a game, not pay for all these good fucking high tier items
Yeah.
when you've got, no offense, not being racist or anything, but someone overseas who's got money is just going to abuse that power.
Well,
Yeah.
it might not even be so much that. Like you might also find like a lot of people paying, um, like over in places like Korea and Taiwan and stuff like that. Hey, twin, how are you? Um, that oh, that looks horrible on there. I just realised my chat box is not set up right.
It is tiny. Wow.
What is going on with that? Oh, I've done something horrible there.
That's still horrible.
Yeah, I'm gonna have to fix that at some point. I'm not gonna try and do it now. Uh, who's your mate?
It would be me.
Yeah, it probably would be you.
Been playing GTA with him.
Ah. Um. Yeah. So I think that we would you would get to a point where you find places like Taiwan and Hong Kong and Korea and China, well, maybe China. Apparently, Blizzard pulling out of China. And that might be to do with the Microsoft deal.
Yeah.
Um, and that's going to cost them a lot of money, but that's a different story. That you'll be able to pay people to go and just like level your character and like farm you the best gear.
Yeah. Right.
Yeah, that's the
Right.
issue there too.
And like I see so much of that happening.
You
Not so
already
not so
are.
much not so much now, but you see it with World of Warcraft, and it's just it's still madness, especially in the PvP area.
Like anyone will do anything for a bag, realistically. Like, but like you said, in that PvP, all those games, you can instantly look up on fucking Google how to level up. Can someone level up? Like it's not hard.
Yeah,
Someone's always gonna do it.
I just worry in those situations for the kind of gamers who do take the game very seriously but want to actually grind for it.
yeah, and
They are the ones who get screwed over the most.
and
Yes.
that's the thing. Like for me, I feel so much more accomplished running through that game and like absolutely annihilating as much as possible.
Hmm.
And like not like even with Diablo 3, like normally like I play through on like normal difficulty, and then once I've played through it once, I go up the difficulty and so on and so forth. this time, knowing that it's going to be like the last season before the new game comes out, I whacked it straight onto hardcore, and I'm like, holy shit, I fucked up here.
Right.
But just before we started doing all this, I just killed Diablo, so I'm now onto the DLC stuff for this season. And then I can go off and start doing all the other bits and pieces and the bounties and start actually getting my seasonal score up and keep upping that difficulty. And like it's fun to do. Like and just keep your gear just keeps getting better and better and better and better. And with the seasonal thing, like there's no end to how much better it can get.
Hmm.
Like everything just keeps scaling upwards. So I think it could be a problem. Hopefully, hardcore is the only place it happens on.
Hmm.
Hopefully, they stick it only into hardcore, and like once they start bringing out um, torment and all that, and adding those into the game, hopefully they don't have it. Hopefully, it's not hardcore and above,
Yeah.
because that could be frustrating for a lot of players that need these items.
Yeah. 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 Absolutely.
Um, so on speaking of PV or what is it? PVEVP,
Yeah.
No, there you technical.
the Division Heartland.
Hmm.
Now, Stu, yourself and I have been pretty avid Division players over the years.
Yeah. I mean, we played both games for a while, and I suppose eventually gave up on both games. But
Yeah.
yeah, we played our fair share.
Apparently they have just added in a new roguelike um, mode into Division 2 to make it
Right.
easy for players to get back into,
Hmm.
um, which could be quite interesting. But yeah, so have either of you seen much about Division Heartland?
Not really. I heard about it a little while ago, but I haven't seen anything. Have there been any gameplay trailers or
Yeah,
anything?
there's a couple out there. IGN have got a deep dive with the developers.
Okay, sure.
Um, if you want to go check that out at some point. Um, and there's also I don't know if it's a gameplay trailer or an intro trailer that they had up
Mhm.
on there as well. Um, but basically, it looks like it plays a bit like a cross between the Dark Zone. Well, it pretty much is the Dark Zone, really,
Mhm.
um, from the other games, but it's in like country America. So the map's a lot smaller.
Yeah. Right. Okay.
Um, and obviously, it's PVE versus VP. So, it's got the PvP elements, it's got the PvE elements,
Yeah.
and it's just for. I'm trying to think of something that Princess would. Because I'm assuming you didn't play any of the Division.
Uh, not in a long, long, long time.
So if you don't remember, the Dark Zone's much like is it DMB or DMZ on Warzone 2?
Fuck. DMZ.
Yeah. So yeah, it's much like that. So like you go in there as teams and get your loot and do all that sort of stuff and get it extracted. Apparently, one of the mechanics in there is that it gets a lot harder at night.
Right.
Like the enemies become stronger and there's more
But then
of them.
presumably the rewards
Yeah,
are much more
yeah.
lucrative.
Um, the the what do you call it? The uh, like diseased zones move as well. So like almost like radiation, like you can sort of see these areas on the map. And I think we may have just lost Princess, microphone wise.
No, all good.
Uh,
No, what the hell's? Can you guys still hear me?
Yeah,
yeah,
fixing something.
Uh,
All good.
no, it's all right. I was just looking at Discord and it all went
It's
funny.
yeah. I had to fix a few things.
Okay.
yeah, keep going.
So yeah, so like it looks like that there's that sort of radiation type thing that's going to sort of like move around. So you've got to like maneuver around that as well. So you can't just sit in the same like
Yeah, yeah.
spot, and enemies roam around the maps as well. Obviously, then you can have other players roaming around and
Mhm.
all that sort of stuff. So it could be a very interesting game for us to team stream.
Well, there's a few games. Like, I was looking at one. Obviously, we need a VR Ghost of Tabor or whatever it is.
Yeah,
Okay.
there's a couple of really good VR games.
Like it's a VR game. It's like practically what we're saying. Like you go out there as a team, you can loot other enemy players. You come back, go to your base, and you just put your guns up and everything like that, and make a
Yeah,
full base of everything you've looted.
I tell you what would have been really really good in VR. Payday 2.
Yeah.
The PC version, not the PlayStation or the Xbox version. The PC
Well,
version.
I mean, Payday 3 is coming out
Yeah,
in
that's
the
true.
foreseeable future. I
Uh,
doubt there'll be any VR implementation, but you never know.
you never know. It's got the potential, but obviously being the first game back, that was due to come out this year. I'm just having a look now. Let's see if there's any.
On the point of streaming that, though, maybe we consider
It is still.
playing Payday 2 on PC.
Yeah, well, that's a very good point. Um,
Yeah.
I had obviously tried to talk you into it for a while, Stu, but we didn't want to because we were playing with Callum at the time.
Mhm.
Um, but yeah, it's got so much more. There's so many more maps, and the story obviously kept going after what we got on console.
It's a shame that there's no kind of character migration because we obviously did a lot of work on the
Oh
game on
yeah,
PlayStation, and
100%.
it's always disappointing when games don't have that kind of feature. It's a little bit of a side topic, I suppose, but I think there are enough games out there now that have either character migration or just being able to access your account from any
Mm,
device, that I don't think developers have too much of an excuse for not offering
yeah.
at least some,
Well,
uh, feature implementation there.
Are we also talking about Payday 2 or Payday 3? Because I just looked on Steam and Payday 3 is the one that planned to release in 2023.
yeah. So
Yeah,
I'm on there. I'm on um, Starbreeze's website now, and yeah, the big front thing on the page is like the New York City skyline, and it's like 2023 is the year of Payday 3.
Hmm.
So yeah, it's still due to come out this year. So I'm very excited. Looking at it though, it may be very likely that Payday 3 might only be on PC.
Yeah. Okay.
we've all got a PC, so
Yeah.
because
we now have a PC that runs well too.
it literally only says, oh no, hang on, it says here in their frequently asked questions, will the game be available on consoles too? And yes, Payday 3 will be available on PlayStation and Xbox. Now that we're developing the game in the Unreal Engine, we can assure that the PC and console versions are the same game and not separate games. Whew.
Yeah.
That's big.
It's good, but again, it does rely on there being some way of accessing your account on both. So, for example, like Epic do this really well. So, take Rocket League, for example. It doesn't, as long as you link your Rocket League or sorry, your Epic Games account and your PlayStation account, you can access your account, all of your cars, all of your progress, all of your purchases on any device
See,
that you can play Rocket League on.
I didn't keep my Fall Guys stuff from when we first played.
So I didn't
Okay,
keep my Rocket League stuff.
I did though.
Yeah, but
So
I didn't.
yeah,
So, but that might have been because I didn't have stuff linked beforehand.
possibly. Um, there
Before
are
they
games that do
migrated
it.
to the new version.
There are games that do it okay, games that do it badly. There was a time when I was playing Genshin Impact, and I started off playing that on mobile, and I can access my account just fine on any mobile device and on PC and get all of the same features, but I can't access my account on the PlayStation version of the game because my mobile one isn't on the Australian server. And you can't select servers on the PlayStation version of the game
Of
like you
course.
can on mobile and PC. So
In saying
I
that,
can't access my account on PlayStation, but I can access it on everything else.
I actually noticed tonight. I went onto the PC version of Diablo the other day and noticed that some of the stuff I have on the PlayStation isn't on there. Cosmetic stuff, whereas other stuff that I'd been given as rewards from stuff had been on both. But I've got a pet on the PC version that I don't have on the console version, and I was running around tonight, and the pet just appeared next to me.
Yeah,
And
right.
even though I go into the pet section, I still don't have that pet. It's really weird. But then I've got one for having StarCraft 2 that I've got on PlayStation that I don't have on PC.
But I mean, ultimately, like if you can't access certain cosmetics because they're like console exclusive or PC exclusive or whatever, that's not the end of the world.
No.
As long as you can earn, as long as you can access your same account and earn progression
No, but
from
you
any
can't-
device.
You can't with Diablo.
Right.
They're separate. The saves are separate.
Yeah. So again, I just think it's a like.
But that game is also
There's
12
no-
years old.
Yeah, okay. So it's a different case, but for new games that are coming out, I really don't think developers have any excuse.
No.
It's like we have talked about before when streaming FIFA, that there's no excuse for them to not have
Crossplay.
cross-gen support in
Yeah.
pro clubs when they have it in every other game mode. Yeah, it's just not acceptable.
We need crossplay. FIFA needs crossplay.
And it has it, but just not in pro clubs.
All right, so pro clubs needs crossplay. We need
Yeah.
we need to be able to play with Xbox players, PC players, well, probably not Switch players, but I mean, I'd like to come up against Switch players in pro clubs. But
If you can go on an Ultimate Team and play a PC player, why can't you do it in Pro Clubs?
Yeah.
What's the difference?
and that's the thing. They were having it in there, and they took it away before release.
Exactly.
and the only reason that you can really think of is that they need to hold back something to announce for next year.
Yeah, with their new overhaul and
That's the thing. They're getting a whole new overhaul. That's big enough, let alone having. Okay, let's just
Well,
add one more thing as crossplay.
they didn't know that they were going to be losing the FIFA branding at that time.
they were in negotiations. They would have had
Yeah.
an inkling.
Yeah. Anyway, as we said, regardless, there's no excuse.
No, and that'll be huge as well if Payday 3 is the same game across the board. There should be crossplay.
Yeah, and if it's running in Unreal Engine, there's no reason why
I can understand them being a small studio and not adding it in.
Yeah, but Unreal Engine has those features built in natively, so there's no reason that it can't be done.
Who's got something playing?
I think that's Princess.
What have I done?
You got something playing in the background?
Nope.
It's got a lot of feedback coming through.
Yeah.
I mean, I am currently drinking and vaping, trying to mute every time I vape.
Right, it's just a lot of feedback coming through the headset. That's all. All right. So the next point, Dead Island reviews. Now, we were both very excited for this, Stu. I don't know Princess's thoughts on it. Obviously, it wasn't too long ago that we played through the first one and almost played through the DLC standalone
Riptide. Yeah.
And then it got to like 2 days before or the day before, and we pulled the pin on pre-ordering it or getting it when it came out.
Yeah. So,
because you'd seen some pre-reviews.
Yeah, well, I don't think that there was any embargo on reviews because there were reviews out at least 2 or 3 days before.
That's usually when the embargo lifts, a couple of days before.
Yeah, it could be. But it seemed to be staggered anyway, so I don't know if it was an embargo or not. Anyway, regardless, the reviews are not bad, not great, perhaps a little bit underwhelming for a game that's been in development for so many years. But then on the other hand, you could say maybe it's done well for a game that has been passed around between so many different developers. Maybe it's a good thing that they actually managed to release it and for it to be stable and half decent.
Yeah, there is
mixed bag, let's say.
I can't remember where I saw it. Either GameSpot or IGN has a really good story on how the game was actually pretty much dead in the water before being brought back.
Yeah.
But like that, and I read that review that you sent me, which I think was from Press Start.
I think so.
Which didn't give it a very favourable score at all.
No.
But then once the actual release day came and IGN and GameSpot put theirs out, they were both giving it 7s. I think PC Gamer gave it an 82 out of 100. Yeah, 82 out of 100. Oh, no, hang on. I take that back. I definitely take that back. Ignore everything I said about PC Gamer.
Oh, here we go.
Giving it that score. That was for the original Dead Island.
Yeah, well, the original Dead Island certainly deserved to achieve at least an 82 out of 100.
So I'm now going to go and pull up the Dead Island 2. Oh yeah, that's not so great.
So I just watched this last Dead Island 2. I played a little bit of 1, not too much of it, and can see the difference. Like Stu said, you could obviously tell that there's been multiple developers.
Yeah.
and it's kind of just thrown together.
And I think it's an indictment on the way that the industry works.
Mm.
That Dead Island 2 was even really able to go ahead in the end anyway. I think maybe it shouldn't have done, and maybe it turned out to be a bit of a cash grab from the publisher to try to maximize on the IP that they happen to own. Um, that they had this falling out with Techland years ago, who made the first one, and have gone on to continue to make very good, successful zombie games.
Which Dying Light was supposed to be Dead Island 2.
Exactly. Yeah. Exactly. And that's why it's so sad, really. And yeah, maybe it's a good thing that they managed to get a game out at all, and that it's okay. But really, it probably never should have been made in the first place.
Yeah. I'm not going to pass too much judgment on it until I actually play it. I definitely want to go and give it a shot, but I think looking now, like I know IGN gave it a 7. Yeah, IGN gave it a 7. GameSpot gave it a 7. PC Gamer 55.
Yeah. Okay.
With the headline, "A Crash Corpse in Designing a Game with No Backbone."
See, that's the thing, though. Like they said, though, they designed a game with no backbone. They
But
still designed it regardless from zero.
yes and no.
I mean, a lot of the fundamental game mechanics, from what I can tell, are the same as the first game.
Yeah.
Maybe tweaked slightly, given instead of a skill tree, they've been given a cards-based system. It's tweaking, really. Like,
Yeah.
it's nothing revolutionary.
No, nothing that should have taken, 12 years, 10, 11 years to come out.
You have a look, though. You have a look at GTA. What's that, 2013? That's almost 10 years as well.
Yeah, it was the same time.
So, at least they've came out with a fucking new game and still not...
Yeah, but the size and the scale of the games are very, very different. And you've got to think as well. GTA Online is still coming out with new updates every single month.
Yeah, that's just for a fucking money grab, though.
Doesn't matter.
In fairness, there's been a lot of new substantial content over the years. Some of the DLC for GTA Online has been pretty big.
And even though it may just be a money grab, at the same time, it is still developers, designers working on that product.
I don't care. Give me GTA 6.
Very, very shortly, if the rumours are true. The rumours are true. We are probably closer to weeks than we are months away from getting a release date.
Which will probably be another year or year and a half away, but yeah.
It's still a lot closer than we thought it was going to be.
A large portion of the game got leaked only, about 6 months ago, so...
Not even that, like there was still stuff coming out within the last 2 months. So that's, yeah.
We could go down a big rabbit hole with Rockstar, because obviously they've been pretty big culprits too, like with the trilogy release.
Yeah.
That quite clearly was just a cash grab. Whether or not we want to go down that rabbit hole, or whether that's something we say for another day, is...
I actually found them unplayable.
Yeah.
Even with the new control system, I tried to play Vice City, and but I found that with a lot of games that I can't go back.
There's one game I found that I go back on, and that's only because I found it after certain events that I'm not going to mention on stream. Was Need for Speed Most Wanted the original?
You see, the only game I've ever found, even with the reporting slash remaster that's not quite a remaster, like they did with Resident Evil 1. I can go back and play that, and Final Fantasy 8. That game is fantastic. I'll forever sing the praises of Final Fantasy 8. I'll still be playing that on my deathbed. That game.
I think there are plenty of examples. It depends on who you are, but again, that was a case with the GTA trilogy. It was basically a perfect example of a cash grab because they took a developer that had never made a PC or console release before, a developer who wasn't even a medium-sized team. It was, by all accounts, a very small team of about 20 to 30
Yeah.
developers, something like that, very small, who had only made mobile games before and only, or primarily, I believe, made mobile ports.
Yeah.
Gave them a game engine that they were pretty unfamiliar with, which was Unreal Engine, and got them to basically just put those three games into Unreal Engine, scale up the resolution and use AI to upscale the textures, and basically just ship it.
Yeah.
And in the process, they took down the original versions of the games, got rid of all of the, they put in DMCA letters to get rid of mods, got mods taken down off all of the different websites, just so that they could get more copies of this definitive edition sold, which clearly isn't definitive at all, even after a bunch of updates.
It's so bad. So bad.
And it just shows you how quite often it can be the publishers who can cause a lot of problems in the industry, because if it had been, for example, Rockstar North, who make the GTA games, or even one of their other major studios like Rockstar San Diego, etc., I'm sure they would have come up with a release of, definitive edition of the trilogy that you could genuinely call definitive. But the publishers have decided to try to make this as cheaply as possible and still charge basically full price for it.
Rockstar's one of those self-publishing studios, isn't it?
Right. So
they have the overall company, which is Take-Two.
Yeah, so Take-Two Interactive are their parent company. Rockstar Games are a publisher, and then they have a number of development studios underneath them. So, for example, Rockstar North, who are based in Scotland, they make the GTA games. They make the major releases of the GTA games. So they did GTA 5, they did GTA 4, so on. But there's also like Rockstar San Diego, I think.
Rockstar
maybe. I think Rockstar San Diego did maybe a few of the smaller GTA releases, like some of the PSP/mobile ones.
Yeah, they did like Liberty City Stories and Vice City Stories.
And they also did like the Midnight Club games back in the day.
Oh, they were so good.
Yeah.
Oh, bring that back.
Yeah.
Sorry. Interrupting your train of thought there.
No, that's okay, but I don't know whether the decision ultimately came from Rockstar Games
or Take-Two
as a publisher, or from Take-Two above them. But either way, it's still a case of executives making decisions that
I would,
really ruin an IP.
I would like to think, because Take-Two also own 2K, don't they?
Yeah.
Yeah. I would like to think that that was on Rockstar. That they just went, okay, let's just pump this out. But then I go back to WWE 2K20.
Mm-hmm. Oh yeah.
And
yeah, 2K are pretty notorious for this kind of thing as well.
Well, but that's the thing, like the NBA 2K games, fantastic. Like they have one or two small issues at the start, but they usually fix them up. The golf games are pretty good.
It's only been
3.
2.5. The first one that they made wasn't under the 2K branding. They technically already owned it, but it wasn't a 2K game yet.
Nah, so it was like when they took over WWE, they kept it as SmackDown versus Raw for a while before moving to 2K.
Yeah.
And for the most part, the WWE games have been good. Obviously, that was a very unique situation. But at the point when Ukes pull out, you've got to turn around and go, okay, so they were doing all our character models and everything like that. They've now left us in the lurch. We don't know what we're doing with it. You probably turn around and just go, look, we should probably push this back.
Yeah.
And maybe not have a 2K20. Let's try and get it right for 2K21. Rather than putting out a bad product, hurting WWE's image. And by all means, it could have been Vince that turned around and went, you know what? Nah, just go ahead and make me money. Because
who knows?
as you've heard from Paul Heyman, it's make me money. That was Vince McMahon in a nutshell.
I mean, as if you wouldn't if you run a company like that, though.
Oh, yeah.
I've just realised I need to make food because I've just gone through a bottle of fucking basically. I'll be back. That whole bottle is gone.
Someone's got the munchies.
Someone's even feeling very fucking tipsy.
You still got. Don't be hungover tomorrow.
I can be hungover tomorrow. It means I can have Cruiser Friday.
Oh, Jesus Christ. I've got to put up.
I got 2 bottles of Gator.
I've got to put up with you on that bus.
Yeah. I got 2 bottles of JD. I'm young to be fucking obsessed.
Alright, well, you go do that. Me and Stu will talk WWE while you're gone.
I can hear you, but I'm just going to not be here.
Yeah. Alright. So, probably the wrong place to put my hands. Thoughts on the new championship belt?
Okay, do you want me to go first, or,
Yep.
do you want to go first?
I want to hear your thoughts on it.
So, I mean, because we had this conversation maybe about a week ago, that I always thought that they never should have gotten rid of that belt. I was hoping that they would bring it back. Talking about the original
NWA,
the
NWA,
NWA,
WCW, World Heavyweight.
WCW, exactly. And so when I heard the news, when you shared with me the news that they were bringing it back, I thought, oh, this is amazing. And then I got a look at the title and I very quickly changed my mind. Now, I don't know if you like it. I think opinion is a little bit split on it at the moment. I don't know what that split is, but from what I can tell from Instagram comments, YouTube comments, there seems to be a bit of a mixed reaction to it.
Yeah, that's. I'm on the fence.
Mm-hmm.
Leaning.
I actually think I've got it up in front of me on my phone somewhere.
Leaning towards liking it.
Okay. So I think to me, like, I don't like it. Uh, I'm not a big fan of this new WWE logo anyway, but that's whatever. That's their branding. I'm not a fan of them just slapping it in the middle of the championship belt. But in fairness, that keeps it in line with their other belts. I kind of get that. I think part of the problem is that that belt was such an intricate design with so many elements on that face plate that sticking this WWE logo on the top of it and the globe that they've put on there all in the kind of charcoal color, it it looks like to me it looks like they took the the WWE Championship belt or the Universal Championship belt and just had that belt shit on the on the World Heavyweight Championship belt. That's what it looks like to
I,
me
I
because it.
I don't think
Oh,
that's charcoal in the middle.
yeah,
I think it's actually like a, I don't know. I thought maybe it is. No, it's gold.
yeah.
It's just it's not brushed like the rest of it is. It's like polished gold in the middle.
I just think that all of the designs around the side just end up looking distorted or squashed
Mm.
somehow as a result of this big design just being slapped in the middle of the title.
Look, to be honest, I'm happy with the shaping. I'm happy they've got the diamonds back around the outside of it. I don't mind the side plates,
Mm-hmm. I think the side plates are fine.
and I think it's a very obviously they've used it for a fair few years now, but I think it's a very good way of having um, a champion's branding on a belt rather than just having
Yeah.
having the nameplate of old like the old big gold had.
Yeah, I was just going to bring that up actually and say that I actually much prefer the nameplates.
Really?
The both, yeah, that belt and also like the undisputed belt had, and quite a few of the belts of that era had the nameplates. I much prefer that over these side plates that the newer belts have on them, but that's a personal preference, I guess.
I mean, don't get me wrong. I do like the fact that it have a name on it, but you could never read it on TV. You could, and especially in this day and age, like if you had, um, I'm trying to think of someone that may have Bray Wyatt, for instance, when he won. Now, if he'd won the championship before he became Bray Wyatt, he would then have two championships at home with different names on them. He'd have one that
Well,
said like Husky Harris, or one that say Bray Wyatt, or actually, no, even still, he would still have two title belts at home, even if it was before the Husky Harris thing, because he'd have one that would say Bray Wyatt and one that would say The Fiend.
they just replaced the nameplate though,
Oh
right?
no,
Like,
but do you know what I mean? Like to me, having the logo on there for a character seems more in line with this day and age than having.
but what if they want to change a character's gimmick anyway, and so that branding needs to change?
But that's what I mean. Like in this day and age, it makes more sense to have a branding logo image change on a belt instead of a name.
Maybe. I did like the fact that at pay per views back in the day, though, that after the belt changed hands, there would be a cutaway where they would show the new champion's name being engraved onto the nameplate to be put on the belt. They didn't do that every pay per view,
Nah.
but there were several of the bigger pay per views where they did that, and I thought it added a certain layer of authenticity to the viewing experience.
But they gave that up pretty quickly. Because I mean, they're like even back in like, jeez, I remember Triple H winning a WrestleMania 16, I think it was, where it was the Fatal 4-Way. It was the Big Show, The Rock, Mankind, and Triple H. And hey,
It was 2016. I remember that one.
no,
2016.
WrestleMania 16 in the year 2000.
Yeah, fuck, that's what I. Leave me alone.
Yeah, so it was the year that The Rock and Big Show went over the top rope together from the Royal Rumble.
Yeah.
And Triple H went into that match as champion.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm pretty sure The Rock won.
I don't remember it.
No, I can't remember off the top of my head either now. But the amount of times I've seen like The Rock, Austin, Triple H change that title, and the other one's holding it up after the match, and it's still got like The Rock's name on it or something like that. That I liked.
Yeah, well, it was only ever like they would do a cutaway of the engraver doing a new nameplate that would then be put on a later date. But I still remember them doing it as late as, what, 2004 would it have been when Eddie beat Brock?
I watched that the other day actually.
Was it No Way Out?
No Way Out.
2004, I think. Yeah. It's either
Yeah, because he died 2005.
Yeah, I reckon it was 2004.
Yeah, so it would have been 2003, 2004. Had to be 2004.
Yeah. Yeah.
So I wasn't at school. I'd left school when that happened.
Mm-hmm.
So
yeah, because didn't Brock beat Kurt Angle for the title at WrestleMania in 2003? So it must have been No Way at 2004.
Yeah. Yeah, definitely. But yeah, look, I'm on the fence. I lean towards liking the belt. I did see one comment online that makes a lot of fucking sense though, and that is someone put out there that creating a new championship and winning that championship doesn't mean anything if you don't beat the current champion. Like, right, what? It's either going to diminish the value of the championship, or it's going to diminish the value of both of Reigns' titles.
Yes. So that's why I wonder what they're doing here. I think there's two possibilities. One is that they're creating a third title so that they can split up the two current titles of Reigns' to be purely a SmackDown champion, a Raw champion, and then you have one overarching champion that's the World Heavyweight Champion, in which case that will devalue both of Reigns' championships, which would seem a bizarre thing to do so many days into his reign.
Let me just stop you for 2 secs. So wait, I don't. Have you seen Triple H announce this thing.
Yeah.
So you've seen the video where he says, like, come the brand split on Friday,
Yeah.
or the draft, wherever Roman Reigns goes, he is staying with those championships.
Yeah. But that doesn't mean that those belts won't then be split up when he loses.
Yeah, well, that's true.
Um, the the other possibility, I guess, is that they intend on replacing one of those belts at some point.
I think they will. I think they're getting rid of the Universal. I don't think Triple H has ever been a big fan of
Mhm.
the Universal, and I don't think now that they're owned by I've forgotten the name of the company. Those that own UFC.
Yeah. I've forgotten the name too.
Yeah, but now that there's that, they're going to want a bit more legitimacy,
hmm
which would make sense bringing the world heavyweight title back,
Yeah.
and then having a WWE champion, which is obviously going to be Reigns. He's going to be the undisputed WWE champion, and I think this world heavyweight title, I think's almost going to be the way that he worded things was very interesting to me,
hmm
especially the when he says will be defended all around the world.
Yeah.
Now they've just had a couple of very successful um, interactions with other companies,
hmm
with Shinsuke Nakamura going off and doing the Great Muda's farewell match and all that sort of stuff. So I'm wondering if there's not going to be a few collabs coming along where you might see this championship defended at a UFC event, or for that matter, even maybe not New Japan because they've obviously got a deal with AEW, but you know somewhere like New Japan or
Well, there's no reason that the WWE and the UFC can't do combined events from now on.
the thing that would probably stop them would be the fans.
Oh yeah. I don't think fans would buy it because I don't think there's an awful lot of crossover. There's some crossover, but there are an awful lot of
I,
like UFC fans that
I think if you were going to
WWE is
do
ridiculous.
if you were going to do, and it depends on how you did it as well. If you were going to come over to like Australia, it would probably make sense. If you were going to do that in America, maybe not. Now, if you were going to do something where I could see it working, would be having, say, Fight Night and NXT in the same building, following each other. So not pay-per-view style, smaller events, something where you would have the UFC have its fight night, that finishes, boom, cage comes out, ring goes in, NXT happens.
Right.
On smaller scale, stuff like that, I could see it working. And you could sell tickets for both events and have a crossover ticket where you pay cheaper than buying two tickets individually. Say you were paying $300 each, sell them for $500, obviously that's way too expensive for small shows, but
Yeah, I get what you mean. Just back on the topic of the titles, there's also a possibility that they could uh, properly merge Roman's two titles
that
into an undisputed title again,
that's what I think they're going to do. I think that's the track they're going down because
which would make sense. It worked successfully for them for years, having an undisputed title, which eventually became the WWE title anyway, but it was
well
the
that
undisputed title
it becomes the
and a
WWE
world
title
heavyweight.
once someone wins it twice.
Right.
Because then they're not. Or the way that WWE always explained it was undisputed because they were undefeated.
Yeah. Yeah, which is not what undisputed means at all.
No, but they'd won both titles. They combined the titles,
Yeah.
and that's why Paul Heyman, even after Brock Lesnar lost, and someone goes, "Well, you can't really call him undisputed anymore," and he goes, "Hang on a minute, look up the definition of undisputed."
Mm-hmm.
And they're like, "Okay, yeah, fair enough." And well, technically, he didn't actually lose that match anyway. Roman Reigns got
Yeah.
pinned by Seth Rollins.
Yeah.
But yeah, I think, and I think the way that Triple H worded that on Raw alluded to that as well, because he didn't say the undisputed WWE Universal Heavyweight Champion. He said the WWE undisputed WWE Heavyweight Champion.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that alludes to that. Now, whether or not they stick with the two titles, or they're going to go down this track and introduce another new title at some point, I don't think they're going to do it yet because they've just unveiled a new title.
Yeah. I mean, they could just keep one of the two titles that he's got because they basically look the same, just
Yeah,
different color anyway.
I think they'd go with a new one.
Yeah, they probably will. But I suppose that the other question is if they did go with the first theory where they split the titles and the world heavyweight belt is like the non-brand associated one,
Yeah.
where the champion can cross over brands as they wish. If they're the world heavyweight champion, would they do a similar thing with the women's division?
I don't think so.
I don't think they would either because I don't think the women's division is quite strong enough at the moment for them to do that. But it would be
I mean,
a
you've
bit
got
of a peculiarity in the system if they didn't do it that way. Given that they're trying to have this kind
yes
of
and no.
parity in, okay, we've got a SmackDown Women's Champion, a Raw Women's Champion. Essentially, they had that with the men's titles for a while until Roman unified them.
And I think that makes them unique in a sense. I do. Unfortunately, I think the roster's almost a little bit too big at times.
Mm-hmm.
I think there's a lot of people that don't get TV time that might deserve a little bit more TV time. It also worries me for some of the NXT talent that's very, very good at the moment that may get drafted to SmackDown or Raw this coming week, and
Mm-hmm.
they might get, swept under the rug a little bit and forgotten about. But at the same time, I feel like the women's division's almost a little bit too small.
Could be. It certainly could be.
And they're trying to shoehorn tag teams together to justify the tag team division for the women. But outside of Ronda and Shayna Baszler, Dakota Kai and Io Shirai, there's no other real tag teams. Like the rest are all shoehorned together.
Yeah, yeah. You're right.
Like even the current champions in Raquel Rodriguez and Liv Morgan, sorry,
Hmm.
they'd only had 2 matches together before they got a championship match, and then they
Yeah.
won the titles.
Hmm.
Don't get me wrong; they're both deserving champions. They both deserve title belts around their waist. But
But
if I was going to have anything in the women's division, I would go back to only having a women's tag team for Raw, SmackDown, and NXT.
mhm.
I wouldn't have 2, and I would be putting a mid card belt in.
Well, if this World Heavyweight Championship belt does become a cross brand title, it essentially becomes the big title. Then essentially the let's say the SmackDown uh, World Champion and the Raw World Champion, let's just call them that for now, or the SmackDown Champion, the Raw Champion, whatever. They essentially become
Mid
the
card
mid
title.
card
Yeah.
belts at that point.
But I'm talking for the women's.
Yeah, I understand that. I'm just saying that there wouldn't be any difference then in that case.
How do you mean? Like I'm talking about having only one tag team title for the women's
Mm-hmm.
rather than an NXT and a WWE,
Yeah.
and then still having your women's Raw, your women's SmackDown champion,
Mm-hmm.
but having a mid card like a women's Intercontinental Championship.
So yeah, all I was suggesting was that instead of having that mid card champion for the women's, you would just do the same as we were just suggesting
Ah, for the
that we
men.
might do for the men, is have a cross brand champion, and then again your 2 other belts become the kind of the mid card ones. Presumably in the men's division they would
But
still keep the Intercontinental, the US title, whatever, but they've always been there, and the men's division is way bigger anyway. So
yeah, I don't know.
I, I I don't think it's the right way to go either, but
I
it's a
feel like
it's a possibility that's on the cards.
I feel like so many elite Hall of Famers, champions, everything like that has come. Like they've all had great runs with the mid card titles,
Mm-hmm.
and realistically, like those titles were there because they were the television champions. They were the
Yeah.
champions that were there to defend those titles to get people to watch the TV shows.
Mm-hmm.
And then the world heavyweight champions, the big ones, they only came out at pay-per-views.
Yeah. 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 And
So
if you're going to have like one world heavyweight champion that's going to hold the title for 9 months, a year, whatever, 2 years, you've got to have another title somewhere that's changing hands a bit more often to keep things interesting.
yeah, and putting on great matches, and
Yeah.
that's where I think the women's division's lacking because you're either in the title picture or you're not, and if you're not, there's nothing for you unless you're being put into the tag division.
Yeah, and there have been an awful lot of women who have held the title for quite short stints. I know that like Charlotte had the title for a long time, but there have been an
Don't even get
awful
me
lot
started
of
on that.
there have been an awful lot of the women's division who have held one of the 2 titles at some point and lost it very quickly.
Mm.
And I think it to a certain extent that maybe delegitimizes those title runs a little bit. So maybe you're right in that if you have a mid card title that changes hands a bit more often, you can take, say, a Rhea or a Charlotte or whoever your big dog in the women's division is going to be, and have them hold that title for a bit longer and only really defend it at pay-per-views.
which is what Charlotte was doing.
Mm-hmm.
Um, but like you've got all this talent, and like you can sit there and you can go, okay, well, Bianca Belair's a champ and Rhea's champ. They're both big enough, strong enough, hold the limelight, hold the fans. Fans love them, whether they're good, bad, whatever. They can hold those championships for long periods of time. Don't get me
Mm-hmm.
wrong, Bianca's title run is getting very stale, but that is what it is. But you've got all these others like your Liv Morgans that are good enough to be champion, but not for long enough.
Yeah.
That Dakota Kai, another one that could really benefit from a mid card title.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, I'm with you on that one.
Like you've only got to look at current US champion or even the Intercontinental champion in Gunther and Austin Theory. Those guys are having great runs with those mid card titles and proving that they are going to be great future WWE World Heavyweight Champions.
Mm-hmm.
And I don't think anybody's going to have a better Intercontinental run than Gunther is for the next 20 years. Like he's on one of those generational runs, much like Roman is, but very differently. If you look at anything that Gunther's done, even when he was Walter in the UK in NXT, like he had that title for nearly 3 years.
Mm-hmm.
Once he beat Pete Dunne, and then the match where he dropped the title was unreal, absolutely unreal.
Yeah.
5-star match, crazy.
Mm-hmm.
And actually, Gunther actually has more 5-star matches from Dave Meltzer than anybody else in WWE history.
Yeah, right. Yeah. He doesn't hand them out that easily.
Not at WWE level.
No.
And Gunther and Sheamus and Drew McIntyre's WrestleMania match got 5 stars.
Mm-hmm.
And that was his 5th 5-star match in WWE.
Yeah.
Which is unreal. And people still say that he's not good enough to be a champion and all this sort of crap. And it's like,
Everyone's entitled to their own opinions, I guess.
yeah, but you see a lot of posts online that are doing it just to be trolls. And
Yeah, probably. Sometimes, people can really disagree about a star as well, and it changes in the future. Like,
yeah,
the vast majority of the WWE fan base hated Roman Reigns for a long time and hated the push that he was getting, and now he's really over.
yeah.
I still don't like him, but
I don't.
I have to admit that he is very over now
Yeah.
in a way
I,
that he wasn't when he was a babyface.
I'm exactly the same. I still don't like him. I still don't believe he's quite. I wouldn't say at the level, but there's something about him that I just don't buy into.
Yeah, I think he is at the level
Oh,
to
100%.
be
Yeah,
to be a
he's
good
at that
champion.
level. It's just something I don't
just
buy
think
into.
I think if they're going to have someone do a, let's say, a 1,000 day title run, I don't think he's that guy personally. I don't think he should be the guy that they have do that.
I don't think they
Um,
have anybody else that could do
but
that, and I
I
don't think
just
I
don't.
don't
I
think
don't
they've
think
had
they should be
anybody.
doing that with anyone at the moment, personally.
I
But
don't.
yeah,
I don't think there's been anybody
no. Look, I,
since
I, I think like
since
if
maybe a
it,
Triple H or
yeah, I think if Brock could have been full time when he first returned,
yeah, yeah,
then I think that would have been fine. But I
and
don't
that's
quite
it.
think that Roman's like you look at the legends that have had title runs of that kind of dimension in the past,
There's only what
and
three ahead of him now:
yeah, something like that.
San
And it just
Martino, Patterson, and Hogan.
think so, yeah. And it to me it feels maybe a little bit disrespectful to history to give him one of those title runs, but that's my opinion on kind of sport generally, uh, if you can even call it a sport.
How
Is that
many? Sorry, how many days was CM Punk's run?
900 and something, I think.
So maybe that's all they're trying to do. They're trying to erase the CM Punk thing because
Who
they've been
knows?
known to do that with records.
Yeah. I just think there's too much of a tendency in sport generally nowadays for people to think of the current generation as the best and to think of the current generation as better than any that have gone before.
It was
And
434, but
yeah, right.
so that
Maybe
won't be it.
maybe that's always happened in history. I don't know, but I think in the case of so many sports, it's quite unfair to the to the legends of the past, who usually deserve to have a much bigger name than they do. And sure, if a record in a sport, if a record's going to be broken, a record's going to be broken. That's fine. But in sports entertainment, I think you've got to when you are writing those scripts, you've got to give those records to the right people.
Yeah, and look, I don't I don't believe, apart from maybe Brock, that anybody else is big enough
Mm.
to be that guy.
I mean, Cena was big enough, but he was always
He's
the
always a
guy
baby face, and
yeah, and he was always the guy to put other people over, and to be
despite the fact
a
that
mul-
everybody fucking complained that he was
yeah,
always burying people.
yeah,
And don't get me wrong, there was probably a little bit of truth to it with some people, but not to the fact that every time someone had a match with him, they were being buried.
I mean, what is he like 16, 17 time WWE
16.
champion or something? 16. I mean,
Tied with Flair's official record.
to be a 16-time champion, you got to lose it 16 times. Like,
Yeah. Yeah. And that's the thing. And yeah. That means Flair lost that many times.
yeah, Flair put heaps of people over.
Flair was notorious for it. Flair would always have some cracking matches as well.
Yeah.
Have you watched the Dark Side of the Ring episode?
No.
There's an episode in season 3 that talks about them going to North Korea with WCW.
Yeah, right.
And like all the fans were forced to be there.
Mm-hmm.
And like the whole place, like the biggest crowd ever at a wrestling event. Like there was 160,000 people there for 2 nights.
Wow.
So it was like 320,000 people all up. And for 2 nights, there was not a noise made until the main event.
Yeah.
And like the main event was like Ric Flair and the guy that started New Japan.
Mm-hmm.
and it was because he'd already had like relations with North Korea. The fans started buying into it,
Yeah.
and apparently it was the loudest thing ever.
Mm-hmm.
And like Flair just sold this guy,
Yeah.
and like he like one of the biggest and best names in wrestling, and I can't remember what his name is, but off the top of my head. But yeah, like just crazy.
Yeah. I just don't think you get the atmosphere generally anymore that they used to get. I've been going back and watching a lot of old matches recently. I watched Rock versus Brock earlier today from 2002, whatever it was, when Brock first became champion, and that the atmosphere in that match, like both of them were so over at the time. It's the
Is is
same with like Rock and Hogan at WrestleMania. Like
is
that's
that
crazy,
because of
and
kayfabe though?
maybe,
Is that because dirt sheets are more accessible now? There's more discussion.
maybe
There's
it could be. And I also watched it a couple of days ago, um, when Hogan brought Hulkamania back on WCW when he dropped the Hollywood Hogan thing, like as he was turning on the NWO.
yeah,
Yeah, the first night that he came out wearing like the yellow and stuff, and teamed up with Goldberg and I've forgotten who else, but
DDP.
like, yeah, I think it was actually, I think it was DDP. Um, and the atmosphere is just insane.
I think DDP's the reason I always was Randy Orton over Cena as well,
Yeah, right.
because DDP was one of my favourite wrestlers growing up, and
Hmm.
especially through the WCW years. And of course, his finisher, the Diamond Cutter, and like Randy's then obviously taken that and modified
Yeah,
it into the RKO.
yeah. Um, yeah, maybe it's a thing about wrestling generally nowadays is that it's become very flashy, and all of the guys are good technical in-ring wrestlers, but fewer of them are great storytellers. Some of them do it really well, but you look at some of those guys in the past, and they could absolutely have the crowd in the palm of their hands, uh, just with a very simple moveset.
Yeah, and I think that going back to Gunther, he is a very good storyteller in the ring.
Hmm.
Very good storyteller in the ring. Um, Very much like Drew McIntyre, Sheamus. You know, they're all big brutes, but they're all very good storytellers in the ring.
Yeah,
And that's why their careers have gone as long as they have. Like, what is Sheamus now? 44, 45? And he's still in and
yeah,
around
yeah.
that picture.
Yeah. But
Um,
even the recent greats,
Orton.
Whether it's John Cena or Brock Lesnar, like Brock has vastly, uh, reduced his move set from his first run in WWE, and
There's no more shooting star presses or moonsaults.
no, but I mean everything that he used to do. He was so athletic in his first run, and
It's
he's
so funny
just as
watching them back.
good, if not a better storyteller with a more limited moveset.
Oh, just go and watch the Omos build up to WrestleMania.
Hmm.
Like I couldn't understand what this match was supposed to do, but Raw after WrestleMania, I got it.
Right.
Brock was getting Omos over, regardless of whether Brock was to win at WrestleMania or not.
Yeah, he made Omos look powerful. You know.
Not only that, by having Brock win, it gets him over even more as a babyface.
Hmm.
And then bang, tables are turned.
Yeah.
Big Bad Brock's back. F5 and Cody onto the steel steps, all that stuff.
The one I actually don't understand is the Seth Rollins Omos match that they're doing. Like,
Again, I think this comes down to this new title. I think Seth's a serious contender for it, and they're building Omos up to be a contender for titles.
the problem is, I think they're using him like they used to use the Great Khali,
Yeah.
and you know that didn't work out that well.
No, not really.
Having said that, I don't think the WWE really know how to handle big guys.
But it's what Vince
I-
loves. He loves big guys.
I think that, like, I think they horribly mismanaged Big Show at times.
Oh, yeah.
Obviously, Great Khali, Mark Henry. Like, you've actually got a guy who was the strongest man in the world,
And you've got him coming. You've got him sharing a bed with Mae Young and calling him sexual chocolate.
Like, they didn't know what to do with him. It was only really back in the days of Andre the Giant that they really knew what to do with the big guy.
But even then, Andre was in a league of his own.
Yeah,
Really.
and it would be very difficult to have a big guy appear that, like, indestructible nowadays, just because of the way that wrestling's gone. I think.
Another guy that they mishandled for most of it is Braun Strowman.
Yeah, well, yeah, absolutely.
I mean, don't get me wrong, he didn't really do himself any favours in his first run. But, I mean, there's a guy who is athletic, is really big, strong, menacing, powerful, could have almost been pushed into the next Brock Lesnar type thing. And whether it's his fault or WWE's fault, probably a bit of a mix. A bit of mishandling there.
I think part of the problem is that they tend to give these big guys like a title run where they squash everyone, and then they have them lose it quite quickly.
Yeah.
And then they can never recover from it. They can never build themselves back up again. Once someone's, like, toppled the mountain, the whole illusion's gone. So I think, like, if they're going to make a big guy like that really successful again, they have to do it like they did with Andre back in the day, and just have him, like, undefeated for ages.
He only ever had one title run, didn't he?
I think so, but I think he was undefeated in, like, singles matches for, like, several years. So I don't think it was a title run, but I think it was a big undefeated streak. I could be wrong.
Yeah. I reckon he only ever won the title once, and I reckon he handed it straight off to Ted DiBiase,
Mm-hmm.
so that he never could lose it, or at least in WWE anyway.
I mean, even with Goldberg's run in WCW though, like, you don't have to be champion to be, or for that entire time for it to be a really impressive thing. Like the Undertaker's WrestleMania streak, for example. You know.
Yeah. Here we go. Yeah, he only ever won the World Heavyweight Championship one time.
Yeah.
And WWF Tag Team Championship one time with Haku.
Yeah, right.
Not bad for a guy that spent 7 years in WWE.
Mm-hmm. Did it say what his undefeated streak was?
It would probably be on there.
I can have a look as well.
No, I can't see it. Not skimming over anyway.
Yeah, Andre the Giant went on a 15-year undefeated streak.
Wasn't that his? Yeah, that was his early stuff from the 70s through to the 80s. When the first time he lost was to Hogan, was that right? In the body slam?
I believe that's what ended it, yeah.
Absolute craziness.
So it says that's what the WWE claimed at the time, but there was probably very little truth to it.
Yeah.
But that's how they marketed it for like WrestleMania 3, that he was
Undefeated.
15. Yeah, that he was on a 15-year undefeated streak.
It wouldn't surprise me though, because he was just that big.
Yeah.
Like if he was doing the rounds in the Indies, he's not losing.
Yeah.
Even in the 70s and 80s, like nobody's beating him.
Mm-hmm.
Because he's being sold as an unstoppable force.
Yeah, basically. Yeah.
So, yeah, I think, yeah. All right. Well, I reckon we should wrap it up there.
Yeah, it's getting late here.
Yeah, very late. Not only that, I am very much in the need of smoke.
I hope for everyone watching that you enjoyed the chat.
Yeah. And by all means, don't forget, anybody watching it back, add your comments, come and join in next time. And